Let's turn from there to what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. Remember, the country remains in the grip of what seems to be almost a full-scale war now. People in Ukraine are finding life difficult. Like in any war, Europe is looking at refugee influx from Ukraine as well. Ukrainians are traveling for hours to cross the border in search of a safe haven. Take a look.
The shelling hasn't stopped in the Russian-backed separatist area of Donbass in eastern Ukraine.
There has been explosions. It was terrifying.
How long was the shelling? What were the consequences?
Consequences? Here, third floor neighboring flat, everything is broken and the roof is damaged. They ran to my flat. Mine is next to one at the corner. We hid in the bathroom. 2 windows are broken in my bedroom.
It looks like this, from a shell.
Shells are destroying what was left of their lives. This area has been controlled by Russian-backed separatists since 2014. Tension and conflict between Ukrainian forces and the separatists have continued for the past 8 years.
Yes, mom's gone. That's it. Mom's gone.
Weary of shelling, these people are now grappling with the reality of being caught in the crossfire of a full-scale war.
In around 3 minutes, another one came here, right into the factory workshop. And those people were hit who did not have time to hide.
This war has destabilized the entire region. One of Ukraine's neighbor is Moldova, another former Soviet republic with a population of 3.5 million. This country now braces itself for refugee influx from its war-torn neighbor. On Thursday, Moldova announced a state of emergency.
Where are you coming from?
We are from Odessa.
How was it in the morning?
We woke up hearing explosions, that's it.
You decided to come to Moldova. Do you have relatives here?
No, we will just go further.
Why are you without any transport means?
We do have a transport.
Everything okay with customs?
Yes, everything is fine. We pass quickly. Parents are there.
Are you scared?
Poland, another neighbor to the west, saw refugees from Ukraine arrive at its doorstep by Friday morning.
We leave our 2 dogs with a friend there because we were not in time to make them a passport or a permissions or I don't know what. So we now thinking about what to do next and going to probably Wrocław to take a deep breath there and decide what to do.
But there were also Ukrainians living in Poland who packed their bags and left for home to defend their country.
This is my father. He's also of Polish origin. He's going back to Ukraine to defend it, to defend everything. I'm his son. There, my mother, brother and sister stayed. We will fight.
As sirens keep ringing and soldiers and tanks march across Ukraine, no one knows what tomorrow will bring. With a full-fledged war on, hope of an early peace has receded to the background.
Meanwhile, some reports now coming in that Russia may seek Belarus intervention to try and bring Ukraine to the dialogue table. Sergei Strokan, senior journalist, joining us from Moscow. Also, Brent Sadler from the Heritage Foundation in Washington with us. Mr. Sadler, do you see a potential solution emerging now through dialogue, or do you believe until the war is effectively won by one side or the other, we will not see an early resolution?
No, so thank you for having me on today. I'd say, unfortunately, once the military forces have been put into play in such large scale, I don't see any rational way or operational way that gets tamped down, either with an outright military victory or things slowing down or getting into a slog. In other words, more of a protracted conflict in which then diplomacy might be able to come back to the fore. It's helpful that channels of communication are being open, but I'm not optimistic that in the next few days that it will actually have a positive result on tamping down the violence that's occurring in Ukraine.
How do you see, though, Mr. Sadler, Joe Biden's approach to the crisis? Do you see him now toughening his stand? Do you see America really pushing these sanctions even harder against Russia in the weeks ahead?
So his words yesterday at his public speech seemed to indicate that he is taking the next level of economic sanctions. The detail of that, however, is left in question. The most significant of the economic sanctions would be to remove Russia from the SWIFT system, which would isolate their financial markets from the rest of the world. That would be the equivalent of an economic nuclear option. There's some dissension of that move by Germany in particular and several others, notably perhaps Italy, because of the economic consequences to their own economies. What's really needed and what may be in store is a continuing bolstering militarily of the NATO's Eastern Front, specifically in the Baltic states, where already Apache helicopters, F-35 fighter aircraft, and about 800 troops have been deployed to bolster up those NATO member states.
Let me turn to Sergei Strokhan, who's in Moscow at the moment. Mr. Strokhan, the US and its allies imposing economic sanctions on Russia. How are these going to hurt Russia? Will they force Russia to change its stand, come to the dialogue table? Do you see that happening soon?
Well, let me start by saying that we have full plate of sanctions. And actually, we are averting sanctions. Some are already installed, others are in pipeline. And as I understand, we have never experienced such sanctions after the emergence of Russian state, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So this is unprecedented sanctions, which are trying to hit Russia's financial sector, which are trying to deprive Russia of technologies, dual technologies. Of course, this would be a hard burden for Russia's economy. I don't want to downplay the importance of the sanctions, and they can hit a blow to Russian economy. But there are some questions which are more important than sanctions. India also passed through a sanction period, during the time of 90s. There are issues when you make history, and President Putin believes that he's making history. Then the entire mechanism of thinking is set in motion, and no one cares about the cost, because history will write it off. Of course, we can speculate, you see, whether this is the right move or wrong move. I'm not a god, you see. I'm not in a position to say who is right and who is wrong. I don't want to be involved in a blame game. I suggest to wait till the dust settles and to find out where it all will bring us. But it is quite clear that Russian leadership is very determined, and it will continue this operation till the very end, how it ceases, regardless of the cost. Cost would not matter.
But what, on the ground, Mr. Strokhan, is the military operation proving to be a bit tougher than what Russia expected it to be? And the human cost, hundreds of civilians could become victims. Is that leading in a way to some kind of a backlash within Russia?
Well, I understand that if you stay in India or in some other country of the world, it's very difficult to figure out what's actually going on, since you have two conflicting streams of reports. One reports are circulated by Russian media, other reports are circulated by Ukrainian media, which are giving totally different picture of what's going on at the ground. And a part of that, we are awash with the fakes and unconfirmed information in social networks like that, even manipulation. So it's extremely difficult to figure out and explain what's going on. I would not pretend that I have a crystal ball and explain you what's actually going on. So, but at least I think that I see some sources which can be trusted, and I can give you some general understanding and trend how the situation is evolving. First point, very important point, I have to start from this. This is not the war against Ukrainian people. when you talk to Ukrainian colleagues, ask them straightforward question. Please name the city or a town where during the last 3 days, Russian army killed children, civilians, babushkas. They won't be able to say a single day. And the reason is very simple. At the moment, Russian army is avoiding big cities. There are no hostilities, urban hostilities in Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Kyiv. All the hostilities are taking place outside. Let me emphasize it once again, outside big cities. There are no shellings of civilians. You see, this is totally different story. Of course, Ukrainians will tell you about Russia's aggression, but they won't be able to answer simple question, where are the civil casualties? Ukrainian army is trying to play a trick in Donbas area by placing their tanks inside civilian areas, inside urban infrastructure, so that to pretend that to be as a war against civilians. If something happened to civilians, let's keep fingers crossed, nothing would happen. But this is not the war with Ukrainian people. And the whole story of this operation, whether you like it or not, you see, is not about fighting with Ukrainian people, but about dismantling Ukrainian military machine, not allowing it to attack Donbas and to be used as a springboard against Russia. Because President Putin sees Ukraine in its present shape as an existential threat to Russia's security. And as a president, as a commander-in-chief, he understands that he has to deal somehow with this. And he's showing guts and balls to resolve that regarding the cost.
You know, let me get a final word from you, Mr. Sadler. Then, hearing the Russian perspective, clearly it appears Vladimir Putin is in no mood to back off early. Do you believe that the Western world is in any position to rein him in?
Well, I'm not. There's a lot that I agree with and a lot that I disagree with in the previous commentators' comments from Moscow. I don't think that economic sanctions would ever change President Putin's calculus in Ukraine. He's a nationalist. His actions are principled on his own terms. So therefore, only the danger of a military confrontation added into the mix would have likely deterred him. So I don't think economic sanctions, even going forward, are necessarily going to deter him progressing in Ukraine or elsewhere. It's going to require more than that. I would disagree. I mean, there has been a lot of precision outside of the cities, but I'm also hearing reports that are contrary to that the fighting is starting to move into the large population areas, and that there is a growing awareness amongst the Russian population in Russia proper that this fight is actually growing much larger than perhaps they were being told beforehand. So whether or not Putin can maintain his popular support going forward, I think is another question to be looked at. And it's certainly a lot of speculation to know how far and how the fighting is going, because we are only into the second day. It is a war zone, and there's a lot of uncertainty and chaos associated with that. So it's very hard to get any real facts of what's going on the ground. And it's a mosaic of little pieces from different sources. So with that, I would say Putin is on a course of action that I don't think he's going to be deterred from until he's either runs into a steel wall or he has successfully met his political objectives in Ukraine.
I think those are words that perhaps seem to suggest that we are still in a situation of flux. It's only day 2 of this invasion that's taken place of Ukraine. All one can hope is that better sense prevails sooner than later. Words of Mr. Menon today will stand with us. It's easy to start a war. It's very difficult to end it. Think about that. That's all that we have on the show tonight. You stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri, Jai Hind. Have a good weekend. Bye for now.